In the vast multiverse, there are few beings whose very existence defines cosmic hunger. Galactus, the devourer of worlds, is one such entity. Born from the death throes of a previous universe, he is not merely a villain, nor a god, but a fundamental necessity of cosmic balance. His purpose is as immutable as gravity. He feeds so that the universe may live. But what if this being, this ancient cosmic constant, found himself drawn across realities, into a universe unlike any other? What if Galactus consumed the Warhammer 40,000 universe? To imagine this is to witness a cataclysm that even the Chaos Gods would tremble before. Our story begins beyond the fabric of the Imperium, where Galactus drifts through the void between dimensions. In his home reality, he has devoured countless worlds, civilizations advanced beyond comprehension, species radiant and beautiful, and empires that thought themselves eternal. Yet as time stretches endlessly forward, Galactus feels something unusual, the faintest echo of power emanating from beyond his universe. It calls to him like a whisper through the warp, a signal of immense psychic energy, vibrant and chaotic, rippling through dimensions like a siren's song. Galactus turns his gaze toward the source, and the boundaries between universes begin to fracture. The dimensional barrier of the Warhammer 40K cosmos is not a mere veil. It is a maelstrom of emotion, faith, and nightmare. The warp seethes like a living storm, fed by the thoughts and fears of trillions. As Galactus approaches, his presence distorts it. The Chaos Gods, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, sense him before he arrives. For the first time in aeons, something enters their domain that is not born of mortal thought. In the Imperium, ripples become tidal waves, demons shriek, planets in real space flicker as psychic storms surge across systems. The Astronomicon, the psychic beacon of the Emperor on Terra, flickers momentarily, confusing Imperial navigators who guide the ships of humanity through the warp. Somewhere deep in the Adeptus Mechanicus archives, a red warning rune flashes, a reading so alien that even the machine priests cannot comprehend it. They call it the Omega Anomaly, a power signature so vast that it dwarfs even a Blackstone fortress. As Galactus breaches the warp, the Chaos Gods act first. To them, this being is a paradox, neither alive nor dead, not of flesh nor soul. He is order and entropy in perfect unity. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, attempts to unravel Galactus's mind, seeking to read his purpose and twist it. Khorne sends forth a tide of demonic legions, their rage forming a crimson ocean. Nurgle releases pestilential rot that devours even the fabric of thought, and Slaanesh tries to lure Galactus with the promise of infinite satisfaction. But Galactus is beyond temptation, beyond corruption. He does not feed on emotion or power in the same way they do. He feeds on existence itself. His entrance into the warp is like the arrival of a black hole in a sea of fire. Demonic entities dissolve upon contact. The Chaos Gods retreat, howling in disbelief. They realize too late that Galactus cannot be fought in their own realm, for he is not bound by the laws of their creation. Their essence recoils, fracturing the warp's stability across the galaxy. Warp storms erupt on every front. On Cadia, astropaths collapse mid-communication. On Baal, the Blood Angels see visions of a colossal shadow devouring stars. And on Holy Terra, the Emperor himself stirs. Deep within the Golden Throne, the Emperor's eyes flare with light unseen for 10,000 years. He senses the anomaly, a being of incomprehensible magnitude crossing into his reality. Even in his decaying state, his psychic essence trembles. This is not a demon, nor a Xenos god. It is something from beyond all known creation. Through the Astronomicon, his fragmented consciousness attempts to analyze it, to understand its purpose. What he sees defies logic, a hunger so vast it could consume the Imperium itself in a heartbeat. Galactus emerges into real space within the segmentum solar, and the galaxy changes forever. His arrival displaces gravity across sectors. Moons shatter, void shields fail, and the stars themselves dim as he manifests fully. The Imperial Navy detects him first, an impossible silhouette larger than any forge world, surrounded by an aura that bends light. Vox transmissions scream with static as fleets scramble. No one can comprehend what they are seeing. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, he appears as the Omnissiah incarnate, a being of perfect technological divinity. They broadcast hymns of praise and data songs in binary, attempting communication. To the Ecclesiarchy, he is the Emperor's herald, descending to judge mankind. Priests fall to their knees, proclaiming his coming as prophecy fulfilled. Yet within hours, the truth becomes clear. When Galactus feeds, faith burns as fuel. He chooses his first world without hesitation. Mars. The red planet glows like a spark before a wildfire. Across the forges and data vaults, Magi cry out as the planet trembles. The Noctis Labyrinthus fractures open, its ancient secrets exposed. Skitarii legions and titans march, their weapons roaring in defiance. But what are weapons against a god that feeds on reality itself? Galactus opens his cosmic engines, and Mars begins to die. Oceans of data collapse, forges melt, and the planetary crust dissolves into pure energy. Billions of machine spirits cry out as their code is consumed, feeding the devourer. In moments, Mars is gone, a glowing wound in space where the red world once was. The Imperium falls into chaos. Across Terra, panic spreads through the ranks of the Adeptus Terra. High Lords argue, demand explanations, and accuse one another of heresy. The Mechanicus on distant worlds go silent, their faith shattered. The Astronomicon flares wildly, struggling to maintain coherence as the Emperor channels his power against this impossible intruder. Yet Galactus is not an invader driven by malice. He is necessity incarnate. His hunger drives him onward. He senses new sources of energy scattered across the galaxy, planets heavy with psychic resonance, worlds steeped in warp energy, life concentrated like sustenance. The Eye of Terror calls to him next. As he turns his gaze toward that cursed rift, something unprecedented happens. The warp reacts, not in resistance, but in resonance. The fabric between realms quivers as both material and immaterial dimensions begin to align. The Chaos Gods, wounded and terrified, combine their essence in a desperate counterstrike. They manifest an avatar, the Charnel Unity, a being forged from their combined hatred, shaped from the nightmares of 10 million psychers. It rises from the eye, titanic and hideous, as tall as a mountain range, its voice echoing across galaxies. Galactus regards it in silence. To him, it is merely another form of energy. When the two titans collide, the galaxy itself shakes, reality bends, and the stars around them dim to black. Warp and matter fuse, creating storms that devour systems. For the first time in history, the Chaos Gods bleed into real space not as shadows, but as substance. And as their avatar strikes, Galactus raises his hand, not in defense, but in understanding. For within this strange, tormented universe, he has found what he sought: infinite sustenance. And the question is no longer whether Galactus can consume the 40K universe, but whether anything in it can stop him. The cataclysm over the Eye of Terror would be remembered, if there were anyone left to remember it, as the moment reality itself screamed. The clash between Galactus and the charnel unity defied physics, faith, and imagination. Each swing of that monstrous warp-born avatar unleashed storms that could have unmade solar systems. Each gesture from Galactus twisted the laws of creation. Space folded, time recoiled, and even the Imperium shuddered under the strain. Across the galaxy, psychic screams echoed in the minds of astropaths. Some fell dead instantly, others went mad, clawing their eyes and whispering about a hunger that eats gods. Fleets lost navigation, planets vanished from records, and billions prayed to the Emperor for deliverance. But prayers could not halt the hunger of Galactus. In orbit around the Cadian Gate, Imperial ships attempted to engage. Thousands of vessels, from mighty battleships to humble escort frigates, poured las fire and macro-cannon shells into the void. Their attacks were as meaningless as raindrops against a sun. Galactus moved through the storm of weapons with silent indifference, his focus fixed upon the warp monstrosity ahead. The charnel unity roared, its voice a billion tortured souls speaking in unison. It hurled entire asteroids like stones, summoned warp tempests that stripped hulls to dust. Yet for all its unholy might, the avatar of chaos was a child lashing against a tide. Galactus reached forward, his hand glowing with the power cosmic, and grasped the creature by its horned skull. The energies of the warp bled from its form, like ink in water. He began to consume. Not flesh, not soul, but concept, the very essence of chaos itself. The four chaos gods screamed as one, their domains buckled, Khorne's brass citadels cracked, rivers of blood evaporating into raw power that flowed into the void. Nurgle's garden withered, its grotesque fertility devoured. Tzeentch's impossible towers unraveled, each secret absorbed into the endless mind of the devourer. Slaaneish's palace of ecstasy collapsed into silence. In mere minutes, Galactus drained a fraction of their essence, a taste of infinity, and for the first time since the dawn of the warp, the dark gods feared. The eye of terror convulsed. Warp storms surged outward in concentric waves. Entire sectors vanished, consumed by spatial collapse. The Astronomicon flickered, its light twisting into an inverted beacon. Terror itself trembled. Deep within the Golden Throne, the Emperor's psychic form strained against its bindings. His mind reached out across the galaxy, spanning the void, confronting this being of impossible magnitude. Their consciousnesses touched. In that instant, the Emperor saw everything: the death of universes, the rebirth of galaxies, the endless cycle of consumption that defined Galactus. He saw that this being was not evil, not chaos, not void, but inevitability. The Emperor understood that to fight such a creature with faith or steel was meaningless, but to speak, to reason, perhaps that was possible. For Galactus, the touch of the Emperor's mind was like a spark of order in a sea of madness. Amidst the cacophony of the warp, one voice rose clear: a mind of purpose, a being who had built an empire upon sheer will and defiance. Galactus paused, and in that pause, the destruction ceased. Across the galaxy, the warp storms began to subside. The charnel unity dissolved into luminous vapor, its borrowed existence undone. The Chaos Gods retreated into their realms, wounded but not dead, their whispers faint and distant. The Imperium, what fragments of it could still perceive, breathed a collective gasp of relief. And then, from the throne room of the Imperial Palace, a pulse of light erupted. The Astronomicon blazed brighter than ever before. The voice of the Emperor, silent for 10,000 years, filled the minds of all who served him. Children of man, do not fear. I speak to the one who devours his words, transcended matter. They reached Galactus directly, vibrating through the fabric of reality. Galactus responded not in sound, but in thought. His voice was deep, resonant, neither cruel nor kind. This universe screams, it is diseased, broken, unsustainable. I consume only what must end. The Emperor's light flickered, but his will remained unbroken. Then you see, as I do. Yet this galaxy still struggles for purpose. If you feed upon it, all that remains will be silence. Galactus gazed upon Terra, the cradle of mankind. He sensed the psychic presence of trillions, the weight of 10 millennia of war and worship. To him, it was sustenance beyond measure, a feast of belief and pain. Yet something in the Emperor's defiance intrigued him. This was not mere survival. This was resistance against the inevitable. "You would bargain with me?" Galactus asked. "I would reason," said the Emperor. "Even the Devourer has reason." A silence stretched across the cosmos, broken only by the distant hum of collapsing systems. Then, with a motion slower than planetary drift, Galactus turned away from Terra. He had tasted the energy of this universe, felt its turbulence, and understood it would not sate him easily. The warp was infinite, yes, but unstable. Feeding here was dangerous, even to him. The balance between reality and unreality was fragile. If he consumed too deeply, this entire dimension might collapse, and with it, his meal. And so Galactus withdrew his hand from the heart of the Imperium. For now. The galaxy, however, would never be the same. Mars was gone. Thousands of systems were lost to warp collapse. The Mechanicus declared the event a divine trial of the Omnissiah. The ecclesiarchy split between two dogmas, those who saw Galactus as a false god to be purged, and those who believed he was the Emperor's own cosmic shadow. The Inquisition moved swiftly, silencing witnesses, classifying all records of the Omega anomaly. But truth has a way of surviving. Rumors spread through the ranks of the Astra Militarum. Whispered on cold outposts, the Emperor spoke. Meanwhile, beyond the Eye of Terror, Galactus began to study this new universe. He drifted through the void like a dark star, analyzing its structure. He saw the Imperium coiling around reality like a parasite. He saw that the warp itself was a boundless source of power, a feast unlike any other. But he also saw the danger. To consume it recklessly might destroy him as well. He required an emissary, a herald. For ages, Galactus had relied upon heralds to seek worlds for him to feed upon, surrogates blessed with a fraction of his power. Here, in this twisted cosmos, he would need a being capable of surviving the warp, one who could traverse the madness of real space and immaterium alike. He extended his awareness, searching for a mind that could endure the transformation. He found it among the ruins of Prospero. There, in the psychic echoes of the destroyed Thousand Suns homeworld, a fragment of Magnus the Red lingered, his essence scattered, yet unbroken. Galactus reached into the warp and drew forth that remnant, reshaping it. Fire and starlight coalesced, reforming a being of immense power and sorrow. Magnus's eyes opened once more, now burning with cosmic flame. "Who summons the crimson sun of Prospero?" he demanded. "I am necessity," Galactus replied, "and you shall be my herald." Magnus bowed his head, torn between agony and awe. His broken loyalty to the Chaos Gods faded, replaced by something colder, purer, purpose. The power cosmic surged through him, rewriting his being. His crimson armor reformed into shimmering metal of unknown origin, etched with patterns of light. His wings of psychic energy became engines of starlight. Thus was born the Herald of the Warp. His task, to seek worlds rich in psychic resonance, to prepare them for consumption, and to speak in the voice of the Devourer. His first destination, the planet of Fenris. There, beneath storm clouds and howling wolves, the fate of the galaxy would change again. Fenris was a world of ice, fire, and fury, a brutal realm forged in endless winter, where even survival was an act of war. For millennia, it had stood as the bastion of the Space Wolves, sons of Leman Russ, warriors whose ferocity matched the savagery of their home. But now, a new light burned in its sky, alien, radiant, and wrong. The newly reborn herald of the warp descended through the clouds like a falling star. His arrival split the heavens, scattering auroras of impossible color. Entire mountain ranges trembled as his feet touched the frozen plains. The wolves fell silent, their instincts overwhelmed by the pressure of his presence. From the Space Wolves' fortress monastery, the Fang, alarms blared. Thunderhawks launched into the sky, weapons primed. Magnus the Red, once a demon primarch of chaos, now reforged by the power cosmic, stood upon the ice, his towering form gleaming with hues of starlight and flame. His third eye blazed with pure energy, no longer a channel of the warp, but something far older, deeper. His voice resonated through the blizzards, carried by power rather than sound. "Sons of Russ," he called, "the cycle of your defiance has come full circle. I bring word from beyond this universe. Your gods are dying." At first, there was only the roar of the wind. Then, from the horizon, came the reply, a low, thunderous growl of engines. Dozens of Stormfang gunships approached, their weapons locked onto the massive silhouette. At their head was Logan Grimnar, the Great Wolf himself, clad in his ancient Terminator armor, the axe Morkai burning with blue flame. "Magnus," Grimnar spat over the Vox, "you dare step foot on Fenris again? We should have ended you with Prospero." Magnus regarded him with something like sorrow. Prospero was a lesson. This is revelation. The sky ignited. The Space Wolves opened fire. Missiles, plasma, melter, a storm of death that could fell titans. Yet every shot dissolved into light before reaching Magnus. The energies bent, refracted, and returned to the heavens as auroral ribbons. Magnus raised his hand, and the guns fell silent. Not destroyed, silenced. The power that flowed through him was beyond the warp's chaos, beyond psychic will. It was the will of Galactus himself. "I am no longer of chaos," Magnus said. "My master is beyond gods. He consumes stars as you drink mead. His shadow now touches this galaxy. I came not to destroy, but to warn." Grimnar's voice hardened. "Then speak your warning, and be gone." Magnus's gaze lifted to the stormy sky. "Your emperor has parleyed with the Devourer. He believes this universe still has purpose, but Galactus hungers. He must feed, or all that exists, even the warp, will wither. My duty is to prepare those worlds that must fall, so that others may endure." A grim silence followed. To the Space Wolves, the words of a sorcerer, especially that sorcerer, could never be trusted. Yet something in his tone, his power, was unmistakable. This was no demon's deceit. It was truth delivered by a god's messenger. And then, without warning, the sky tore open. A rift of violet flame split the clouds, and out of it descended the servants of chaos. The charnel unity may have been undone, but the dark gods were far from silent. They had seen Magnus's rebirth, his betrayal, and they demanded vengeance. From the wound in the sky poured demons, bloodthirsters, plague-bearers, horrors and fiends, an army of nightmares unleashed upon the ice. Magnus turned, his face tightening. Even reforged, he was bound to his past. The demons howled his name, mocking his defiance. Traitor, apostate, devourer's slave, the space wolves unleashed their fury. Bolters thundered, chains wards roared, and frost axes split demon flesh. The ice plains became a battlefield of fire and madness. Magnus raised his hands, summoning the power cosmic, weaving it through his once psychic instincts. A storm of pure, radiant energy erupted from his palms, erasing demons from existence, not banishing them, not killing them, but unmaking them. Grimnar watched in awe as Magnus fought, not with warp flame, but with light that stilled the warp itself. The demons faltered, their forms flickered and shattered. Within minutes, the invasion was ended. The rift closed, its last echoes dying in the wind. When silence returned, the great wolf stepped forward, axe in hand. "You saved us," Grimnar said quietly. "Why?" Magnus's third eye dimmed, and for a moment he looked almost human. "Because the galaxy will need its wolves. My master consumes only that which must end. But there is still a chance, however small, that your kind may endure." Grimnar studied him, then gave a curt nod. "Then you've said your warning." Leif Fenris Magnus bowed his head. "As you wish, son of Russ. But remember this, the Devourer approaches. When he feeds again, no blade, no god, no prayer will halt him." With that, he vanished in a beam of blinding light, leaving only the faint shimmer of cosmic frost behind. Word of the encounter spread like wildfire across the Imperium. The Inquisition tried to suppress it, but whispers persisted. "The Red God has returned," soldiers said. "A being greater than the Chaos Gods comes for us all." In the shadows of terror, the High Lords argued in fear. Some demanded new crusades, others sought to hide the truth. But across the warp, the Chaos Gods brooded. Their power was diminished, and their pride wounded. Tzeentch, ever the schemer, spoke first among them. "If we cannot defeat the Devourer, perhaps we can use him." The others hesitated. To ally with something beyond their creation was madness. Yet desperation drove even gods to folly. And so, in the depths of the warp, a new plan took shape, to twist the hunger of Galactus against the material realm itself. Meanwhile, in real space, Galactus drifted near the halo stars, surveying the galaxy's fringes. He found worlds pulsing with psychic life, living conduits of the warp. He consumed two without effort. Each feeding tore rifts that shimmered across the galaxy like open wounds. The astronomers of the Mechanicus called them Omega Voids. Ships vanished near them. Time broke within their radius. The Emperor watched helplessly. His throne hummed with strain. The Astronomicon pulsed erratically. Each act of consumption disrupted the warp, and with it, humanity's ability to travel or communicate. The Imperium began to fracture under its own immensity. Planets once bound by faith and duty now drifted into isolation. And yet, amidst despair, a thought flickered through the Emperor's weary consciousness. An opportunity. If Galactus sought to consume, perhaps his hunger could be directed. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could be guided toward chaos itself. The warp was poison. Let the Devourer feed on that instead of reality. Across the galaxy, agents of the Inquisition began assembling the most dangerous plan in Imperial history. A weapon was theorized, not of matter, but of faith. Using the Astronomicon as a lure, they would open a psychic corridor, guiding Galactus's hunger directly into the heart of the warp. It would be suicide for the Imperium, but salvation for the universe. Unknowingly, they mirrored the designs of the Emperor himself. And as fleets gathered, demons stirred, and worlds burned, the Devourer's herald moved once more. Magnus gazed into the stars, his mind filled with the voices of the dying and the whispers of gods. For the first time, he questioned the will of his master. Was the preservation of existence worth the destruction of all within it? In the distance, beyond the halo stars, something stirred, ancient, vast, mechanical, a Dyson sphere, half-shattered, orbiting a dead sun. And within it, the Necrons had awakened. In the cold void beyond the halo stars, silence reigned, a silence older than humanity, deeper than the warp. It was the silence of the Necrons. For 60 million years they had slept, dreaming in metallic stillness, their empires buried beneath forgotten worlds. But now, something vast and unnatural had disturbed their slumber. Across tomb worlds, sensors that had not activated in eons flickered to life. Within sepulchres of black metal, the eyes of overlords and pharaohs blazed green once more. Their ancient networks whispered through the void, exchanging data at the speed of thought. They all felt it. The same anomaly, the same incomprehensible presence devouring the stars. For the Necrons, who had once warred against gods, the arrival of Galactus was more than intrusion. It was memory reborn. On the shattered Dyson sphere, orbiting the corpse of a star known to the Mechanicus as Nexar 9, the Silent King himself awakened. Sharek rose from his throne of Necrodermis, the energies of his stasis field collapsing with a thunderous hum. The chamber around him glowed with hieroglyphs of data, pulsing like veins of light. His two Triarch Praetorians kneeled as he spoke, his voice resonating through quantum frequencies. The great devourer returns, but not the one of flesh. This is hunger made divine. Through the ancient Necron datanets, Zarek accessed the sensory feeds of their outermost tomb fleets. They showed him the impossible, entire star systems vanishing in waves of distortion, no organic corruption, no warp signatures, no biomass, only consumption. The power cosmic was something the Necrons had no record of, yet its pattern of energy reminded him faintly of something else, the Citan. Those star gods, the Necrons' ancient masters, had once fed on suns, as Galactus now did. They too had been vast, beyond comprehension. But the Necrons had destroyed them, shattered their forms, and enslaved their shards. Zarek remembered the war, their betrayal, their hunger, and realized with cold certainty that this being was worse. The Citan had been finite. This one was endless. "Awaken the shards," Zarek commanded. "They must see what has come." Within the Dyson sphere, containment fields deactivated. Blinding light filled the vaults as fragments of the Citan, bound in living Necrodermis prisons, flared in agony. The Deceiver, the Nightbringer, the Void Dragon, all pulsed in recognition, their ancient memories stirred by the presence of something far greater. Even these god shards, stripped of divinity, feared. The Deceiver's voice slithered through static. "He feeds as we once fed, but he does not stop. He does not hunger to rule. He hungers to be." The Silent King studied them for a long moment. Then, with an echo of grim pride, he spoke. "Then we, who slew gods, will do so again." He ordered the reawakening of the Triarch fleets, the greatest concentration of Necron power since the war in heaven. Thousands of tomb worlds rose from dormancy. Black monoliths lifted from dust. Dyson constructs and planet-sized pylons flared to life, creating an interlinked web of null energy, a vast weapon designed to sever the warp from reality. For Sharek knew that this Galactus drew strength from the unstable blend of matter and immaterium that defined the 40K cosmos. To starve him, one must restore silence. As the Necrons began their mobilization, Magnus the Red sensed the stirrings, from across the galaxy. Through the power cosmic, he felt their awakening like ripples in a vast pond. He had once fought these machine gods long ago when he still served chaos. Now, as herald, he saw in them something Galactus might respect: clarity. They were pure will, uncorrupted by emotion, unbound by the warp. Yet he also felt something else: fear. The galaxy itself was beginning to resist. He reached out to his master through the currents of light. The dead awaken, Great One. Their silence rises like armor around the stars. Galactus, drifting near the galactic rim, answered without emotion. All life resists consumption. It is the reflex of existence. Their defiance sustains the balance. They seek to cut you off, Magnus said, to close the pathways that feed you. Then they will learn, Galactus replied, that silence cannot silence hunger. His vast form turned, and the void folded around him as he shifted toward the Necron Armada. Meanwhile, within the Imperium, the Emperor's desperate gambit began to take shape. Deep within the vaults beneath Terra, the Inquisition's most secret conclave gathered, Ordo Omega, created for threats that defied all classification. At its head stood Inquisitor Vera Dominica, once of the Ordo Malleus, now sanctioned to act with authority beyond even the High Lords. Before her floated the holographic visage of the Emperor's regent, Robert Guilliman himself. "We have confirmed his pattern," Dominica said. "He consumes systems rich in psychic flux. If we can predict his next target, we may channel his hunger where it can do the least harm, or even use it to strike at the warp." Guilliman's expression was grave. "We play with powers that make chaos itself look small. Are you certain this plan comes from the Emperor?" "His will moves through the Astronomicon," she replied. "He has spoken in symbols, through dreams, through data ghosts. The meaning is clear. We are to turn the hunger inward." Guilliman considered this. In his mortal pragmatism, he distrusted divine omens. Yet if the Emperor's mind truly guided this, then there was purpose even in madness. "Proceed. But know this: if you fail, the Imperium will not fall to heresy. It will vanish into nothing." On the outer rim, Galactus reached the Necron defense grid, a wall of living metals stretched across an entire sector, thousands of monoliths linked in geometric precision. Energy arced between them like veins of lightning, creating a barrier that shimmered across light years. At its center hovered the Silent King's command vessel, its obsidian hull alive with runes of anti-reality. Sharek appeared as a projection before the Devourer, his form dwarfed yet unbending. "You are not the first to hunger for our stars," he said, "and you will not be the last to die upon them." Galactus regarded him without malice. "You mistake purpose for choice. I am not life. I am the balance that sustains it." "Balance?" Zarek's voice turned to steel. "Your balance is annihilation. You consume order and chaos alike. You are entropy disguised as need. And yet you exist because of it," Galactus said. "The stars that birthed you once burned others. Your own gods devoured suns as I do. I merely continue what they began." The Silent King extended his hand, and the barrier flared. "Then let us see which hunger endures." The first Necron assault began. Thousands of planet-killer beams fired in unison. The void lit up brighter than any star. The energy could have destroyed entire systems, but when the light faded, Galactus still stood. The energy had been absorbed into his armor, converted, integrated. He reached outward, and with a single gesture, unmade a fleet. Ships dissolved into metallic dust, reabsorbed into the cosmic ether. Still, the Necrons persisted. Pylons activated across the sector, channeling energy from the galactic core. The void itself began to twist. The barrier they had constructed did not merely resist, it erased. For a moment, even Galactus's power faltered. His connection to the warp dimmed, his link to the Emperor's reality strained. Zarek watched, calculating, precise. Even gods can be starved, he said quietly. But Galactus was not merely godlike, he was principle, and principles cannot be destroyed, only transformed. He drew deeper upon the power cosmic, bypassing the local fabric of reality entirely. Space itself became his weapon. The Necron pylons began to crumble, their geometry failing under paradox. The barrier destabilized, its pattern folding inward like a dying star. Zarek ordered retreat, but too late. The void erupted in white light as Galactus fed, not on metal, not on energy, but on structure. The laws that defined that region of space broke down, consumed by the logic of his hunger. When the brilliance faded, the entire sector was gone. Yet the victory came at a cost. The feeding had destabilized the galactic fabric further. Warp storms multiplied, now uncontrollable, spilling into real space. Chaos seeped through every wound. The galaxy screamed as both physics and faith began to fracture. Far away on Terra, the Emperor's light flickered, and for the first time since the heresy, a tear traced down his decaying cheek. He whispered into the void, unheard except by one. If he consumes both reality and unreality, then all balance ends. And in that whisper, the Emperor made a decision that would change the cosmos forever. He would confront Galactus himself. The devastation was biblical. Hive worlds that had stood for millennia were stripped bare in hours. The teeming sprawl of Necromunda, once a planet of countless towers and endless smog, was gone. Only a glowing scar remained where its core had been devoured. Every servitor, every forge, every hive spire, all erased in silence. The few survivors who witnessed the sight and transmitted Vox records spoke of a shadow within light, a vast silhouette framed against the glare of a dying sun. And in that instant, the Imperium finally understood that this was no Xenos invasion, no warp-born nightmare. This was something far older, something that dwarfed even chaos itself. The Ordo Xenos declared a galactic extremist threat classification, one not seen since the awakening of the Necrons. The Ordo Malleus theorized that Galactus might be a warp entity made manifest, while the Mechanicus saw him as the final expression of consumption, entropy given form. But for all their doctrines and sacred theories, the reality was simple. Galactus was hunger. The Emperor, still enthroned upon the Golden Throne, perceived the cosmic disturbance even through the warp's infinite noise. His psychic senses, tied to the Astronomicon, flared in anguish as worlds winked out of existence like dying embers. To him, Galactus appeared not as a being of flesh, but as a devouring equation, a fundamental imbalance in the universe's energy. His will reached out across the warp, whispering to his most trusted servant, the resurrected Robut Guilliman. In the shadowed sanctum of the Imperial Palace, Guilliman convened the Lords of Terra. A new crusade was declared, not of expansion, but of survival. Fleet Primus, led by the sons of Macraga, would make contact with this cosmic predator. If possible, they would negotiate. If not, they would fight, even if it meant extinction. Meanwhile, the Eldar Farseers gathered in the infinity circuits of Ulthwé and Bieltan. Their psychic visions showed them a future that was paradoxically both barren and blinding, a universe where the warp itself had gone silent. To them, Galactus represented not just death, but the end of emotion itself. Without souls to feed the warp, the Chaos Gods would wither, and the Eldar's long war against Slaanesh would become meaningless. Some Farseers saw this as salvation, others as annihilation. The craft worlds debated for weeks in psychic communion. Finally, it was decided. A council of Eldar, Harlequins, and even Drukhari envoys would attempt to reach the being, not through weapons, but through understanding. If Galactus could be reasoned with, perhaps he could be guided away. But no one truly believed such a god could be swayed by words. In the Eye of Terror, the Chaos Gods stirred restlessly. They felt their sustenance thinning. Galactus did not feed on souls or belief. He consumed the material and psychic fabric of reality itself. To beings of pure emotion, this was starvation. Khorne's rage burned hotter. Tzeentch's schemes turned erratic. Nurgle's gardens withered. And Slaanesh screamed as her domain of sensation began to flicker at its edges. For the first time since the birth of chaos, they faced an enemy that neither feared them nor acknowledged their existence. Abaddon the Despoiler, ever opportunistic, saw the situation differently. He summoned his lieutenants aboard the Vengeful Spirit and spoke of a grand plan. The great devourer of worlds, he said, can be turned. He feeds because he must. But if we could harness his hunger, direct it, perhaps he could devour the false emperor himself. The Black Legion began mobilizing, not to fight Galactus, but to find him, believing that if they could commune with his herald, they might weaponize the Devourer's path. That herald, meanwhile, had already arrived in the galaxy, the Silver Surfer. His board cut across void and warp alike, moving faster than light, faster than thought. His eyes scanned endless data through his cosmic awareness. What he saw horrified even him, a civilization so consumed by war that its suffering resonated across the galaxy like a siren song. Billions of psychic screams reached him every second. The warp shimmered, distorting his senses, yet he pressed on. The Surfer landed first upon the desert world of Armageddon. He found it scarred from countless wars, orcs, chaos, and Imperium alike. He expected to be met with diplomacy. Instead, he was attacked instantly. Imperial Titans unleashed their plasma annihilators, believing him to be a demon. The orcs cheered and joined the fray, thinking him a new, big shiny boss to fight. Within minutes, the surface was engulfed in madness. Yet the Surfer did not retaliate. His voice echoed across Vox networks, calm and resonant. People of this galaxy, the World Eater comes. Your defiance feeds only his hunger. Prepare yourselves. Pray, if that gives you peace. But know this, your gods cannot save you. That broadcast spread across the Segmentum Solar within hours, translated and amplified by Mechanicus relays. Millions heard it. Panic spread faster than plague. To some, it sounded like prophecy. To others, heresy. The Ecclesiarchy declared the Surfer a demon messenger of damnation and called for his capture. Yet in the hearts of those who had lost faith, his warning felt true. When news of the Surfer reached Mars, the Fabricator General ordered an immediate communion with the being. The Mechanicus had long believed in the existence of ancient cosmic intelligences, machine gods, star entities, and void spirits. Galactus, they reasoned, might be one of these. A fleet of Arch Mechanicus vessels was dispatched to intercept the Herald. They hoped to parley to understand the equation of his master. But time was running out. Across the galactic rim, Galactus approached the tomb worlds of the Necrons. The Silent King himself, Sharek, observed through quantum relays as the being's shadow fell upon his metallic domain. The Necrons had seen many cosmic horrors, the Enslavers, the old ones, even the birth of chaos. But this was different. Galactus did not kill, he erased. When his vast machinery deployed, rings the size of continents that siphoned planetary energy, the Necron armies struck with terrifying precision. Gauss flares tore atoms apart, pylons redirected power from black holes, and entire dynasties awakened to defend their domain. For the first time since their resurrection, the Necrons fought not for conquest or vengeance, but for existence. It was a battle of titans, planetary shields held for hours before collapsing. Reality itself bent as Galactus absorbed the life force of a dying sun. Millions of Necrons were disintegrated, their soul fire extinguished permanently. Yet, the Silent King stood his ground. Using the full might of his dolmen gates, he projected his consciousness before Galactus. "You are not of this realm," Zarek declared, his voice reverberating across the void. "You trespass upon the dominion of the undying. Leave this galaxy, or face the eternity of our wrath." Galactus paused, not out of fear, but curiosity. His immense gaze fell upon the Necron King. "Eternity," he rumbled, his voice shaking space-time itself. "You speak of that which you have already lost." And with that, he consumed the tomb world. Zarek barely escaped, his consciousness fracturing across the web of dolmen gates. The loss was catastrophic, but in that destruction came revelation. Galactus could not be reasoned with, but he could be observed. His energy signature followed patterns, mathematical, rhythmic, almost predictable. If the Necrons could analyze it, perhaps they could find a way to redirect it. The Silent King vowed then that he would gather every weapon, every shard, every fragment of knowledge from across the stars to counter the Devourer. The galaxy, for once, had a common enemy, and yet deep within the warp, the Chaos Gods were not idle. Slaanesh, ever cunning, whispered to her siblings, "What if the hunger could be seduced? What if the Devourer could be turned not by reason, but by desire?" Thus began the Unholy Alliance, an attempt by the ruinous powers themselves to ensnare Galactus within the warp's embrace. But Galactus was no mortal, and what he did next would forever change the balance between matter and madness. The warp trembled. Across its infinite roiling seas of madness, something impossible occurred. Where chaos reigned supreme, where emotion, sin, and suffering gave shape to gods, there was now a silence. It spread like an infection, a growing vacuum of nothingness that devoured not only demons, but meaning itself. Galactus had not entered the warp willingly. It had reached out to him like a beast sensing prey too vast to ignore. The Chaos Gods had conspired to pull him in, to twist his hunger into devotion, his reason into madness. But Galactus was no mortal psyche to be overwhelmed, no soul to be tempted. He was a constant, a truth of the cosmos. When his essence brushed against the Imperium, the effect was catastrophic. Corny's realm, an endless wasteland of blood and fire, shuddered. The rivers of gore evaporated into static silence. The skulls of the slain turned to dust, and the blood god roared in rage as he felt a piece of himself cease to exist. Tzeentch's crystalline towers melted into pure entropy, their impossible geometry collapsing into formless white void. Nurgle's garden withered to ash, and even Slaanesh's palace of sensation went numb, her laughter choking into silence. Galactus did not fight the warp. He starved it. Billions of demons vanished instantly. The Astronomicon flickered as psychic energy across the galaxy waned. Human psyches screamed in agony as their link to the warp snapped. Astropaths went blind. Navigators lost the light of the Emperor and began to drift in darkness. For a brief moment, it seemed the galaxy itself might collapse, not from destruction, but from spiritual emptiness. And then, as quickly as it began, Galactus withdrew. His hunger was sated, but what he consumed was not food, it was balance. For the first time since entering this universe, he had tasted something akin to sustenance. The warp had offered him what no star or world could, a different kind of energy, infinite and unstable. In his mind, Galactus began to understand this new cosmos. Its reality was dual, matter and mind, flesh and thought intertwined. The Imperium was a mirror of consciousness, and in consuming even a fragment of it, he had touched the essence of every being in the galaxy. Their pain, their violence, their endless war, all of it had resonated within him. He felt it, understood it, and found it repulsive. From that moment onward, his purpose shifted. He would no longer feed randomly. He would cleanse. The herald of this revelation came in the form of the Silver Surfer. Returning from the chaos of Armageddon, he found his master orbiting a dead sun, surrounded by the husks of 10,000 ships. The surfer knelt in reverence. "You have seen into their darkness," he said softly. "Do you understand them now?" Galactus's voice was distant, like thunder heard through the bones of the universe. "I understand too well. They are a cancer upon reality. Their gods are parasites. Their wars feed upon themselves. This galaxy is diseased." The surfer hesitated. "Then you will cleanse it?" "I will consume its infection," Galactus replied, "not to feed, but to heal." But across the Imperium, none saw this as salvation. They saw only annihilation. Entire systems had vanished. The Adeptus Mechanicus had lost half its fleet. The Necrons were in retreat. Even the Tyranids, mindless devourers in their own right, were turning away from the galactic rim, their hive minds recoiling from the presence of a greater predator. On Terra, Gilliman listened as reports came in from every corner of the galaxy. His expression was grim, his voice steady. "We cannot reason with a cosmic god. We cannot pray him away. But if he seeks to cleanse, perhaps he has logic. And if there is logic, there may be weakness." Thus was born Project Solus Exterminatus, a plan devised by the Mechanicus and sanctioned by the Emperor himself. Its purpose, to study the cosmic laws Galactus embodied and find a way to sever his connection to this reality. Magos Dominus Belisarius Cowl led the effort, aided by the brightest minds of Mars and Luna. They constructed the largest device ever conceived by human hands, the Null Halo, a Dyson-scale machine designed to invert warp space frequencies and create a psychic void, a trap capable of isolating even Galactus's essence. To power it, they required something beyond comprehension, the energy of a dying god. And so, an Inquisition strike force was dispatched into the Eye of Terror, their target being a fragment of Slanesh's essence, one of the Laughing God's traps that had captured a shard of her soul during the ancient Eldar Wars. The mission was suicide, but they succeeded. The shard was brought back, encased in stasis fields and sealed within the Halo's heart. When activated, the Null Halo spread across space like a great mechanical eclipse. Its rings shimmered, resonating with psychic feedback that silenced entire star systems. Demons flickered out of existence. Warp travel halted. Even the Astronomican's light dimmed to a faint ember. For the first time, the galaxy was truly still. Galactus noticed, his vast head turned toward the Sol system. "They dare," he murmured. "They seek to cage me." The surfer hesitated. "Perhaps they fear what they cannot comprehend." Galactus's eyes flared like suns. "Then they will comprehend extinction." His engines roared, generating gravity waves that crushed nearby stars. The Devourer of Worlds began his descent upon Terra. The Adeptus Mechanicus activated the Halo's full power. Reality twisted. Space folded in upon itself, and for a brief, impossible moment, Galactus was caught. His energy fields fluctuated, his cosmic armor fractured. Across the galaxy, millions cheered. The machine god had been bound. But Galactus was older than gods, older than time as mortals understood it. Within the Null Halo's prison, he reached into himself and drew upon what he had absorbed from the warp, the echo of chaos itself. The void bent around him, and the halo began to crack. Inside his containment, he spoke, directly to the Emperor, not aloud, but through the Imperium itself. I have seen your light, Emperor of Man. I have tasted your suffering. You sit upon your throne of pain, sustaining your kind with your own decay. You are a candle in a storm, and your storm has already ended. The Emperor's psychic form flared within the warp, his golden aura defiant. I am humanity's shield. I will not let you unmake what we have built, Galactus's voice thundered. You misunderstand. I do not seek to unmake you. I seek to consume your disease. And with that, the Null Halo shattered. The explosion was seen from Mars to Pluto. Energy arcs ripped through the solar system, tearing apart orbital stations and annihilating fleets. The Halo's fragments rained down like burning moons. Galactus emerged unscathed, glowing with an impossible radiance, half cosmic, half warp-born. The Emperor's throne shook. The Astronomicon went out. Across the Imperium, a single phrase echoed from the Vox relays of dying ships and fading psychers. The Eater of Gods has risen. What came next would not be a war of armies, but a collision of realities. The Emperor, bound to the warp, would face the one being capable of devouring it. The fate of the galaxy, of existence itself, would hinge on which truth could outlast the other. Faith or hunger. The Astronomicon was dark. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy's psychic beacon, the Emperor's guiding light, had gone silent. Warp travel became suicide. Millions of ships were stranded between stars, their navigators blind, their crews driven to madness in the timeless dark. Across 1,000,000 worlds, the Imperium trembled. On Terra, the sky burned. Fragments of the Null Halo still rained down, turning the upper atmosphere into streaks of molten light. The great orbital stations of the Adeptus Mechanicus were gone, vaporized in the detonation. The void shields of the Imperial Palace flickered under the strain. From the ruins of the Fabricator General's sanctum, survivors whispered a single name in fear: Galactus. Above them, he loomed, a being the size of mountains, haloed by cosmic fire. His presence bent gravity, twisted the tides, and made the stars themselves dim. To mortals, he appeared as a god, one both terrible and magnificent. His armor was a reflection of the universe itself, patterns of galaxies and quasars shifting across its surface. His eyes, twin suns of violet energy, scanned the throne world below. Within the palace, Robert Guilliman stood before the shattered windows of the Strategium, staring at the being who had defied the impossible. His armor was cracked, his expression unreadable. "He cannot be fought," he said quietly, "but he must be opposed." Saint Celestine stood beside him, her wings folded in solemn silence. "Then we die for more than faith," she answered. "We die for memory." Guilliman turned. "No, we do not die." Not yet. He activated the command vox. "All remaining Primaris formations. Deploy defensive pattern Omega around the palace. Divert every macro battery and prepare the psychic conduit." The Emperor must speak deep within the golden throne. The Emperor's consciousness stirred. He had been fading for centuries, his body a husk, his mind spread thin across the Astronomicon. But now, faced with annihilation, something ancient reawakened. The light that once guided humanity began to flicker again, not bright, but focused. Across the warp, every psyker felt it, a surge of divine force, radiating from Terra. The Emperor was no longer a distant god. He was awake. Guilliman, his voice echoed, not through sound, but through thought. You have done well to preserve what I could not. But now, the hour has come. The storm has found its eye. My lord, Guilliman replied, kneeling, he has consumed the warp itself. We cannot match his scale. He is— I know what he is, the Emperor interrupted. He is hunger, given purpose. And hunger can be fed. The throne began to vibrate. Energy built around it like a rising storm. Thousands of psychers connected to the Astronomicon screamed as their souls were drawn into a singular point. The Emperor's essence expanded, filling the palace with blinding light. His form materialized, a figure of radiant gold, towering, armored in living light. For the first time in 10 millennia, the Emperor of mankind walked. Outside, the sky split open as Galactus descended lower, each step shaking the ground like the heartbeat of a dying god. His voice rumbled across continents. You burn your stars to prolong your decay. You worship your corpse as if it were salvation. I offer you the truth, peace in oblivion. The Emperor's reply was thunderous. You misunderstand peace. It is not the absence of life. It is the triumph of purpose. Their voices collided across the planet's atmosphere, soundless, yet felt in every mind, every soul. To mortals below, it was like hearing creation itself argue with destruction. Galactus raised a hand. The air folded into itself, turning matter into energy. Armies disintegrated without pain. Titans melted into slag. Orbiting fleets were drawn into the sky, like sparks into a storm. Purpose is irrelevant to entropy, he said. The universe exists to sustain balance. You have poisoned that balance. The Emperor extended his own hand. The light of the warp, what little remained, rushed toward him. His form became brighter, sharper, almost unbearable to look upon. I am balance. I am the will of sentience. You devour without discrimination. That is not order. That is hunger's madness. For a moment the two stood opposed, gold against violet, life against cosmic inevitability. The energy between them was enough to warp space-time. Storms of raw creation formed around them. Planets shuddered. Even the moon cracked under the gravitational strain. In orbit, the surviving Mechanicus ships recorded impossible readings. Gravitational fields, bending light. Temporal feedback, creating echoes of events before they happened. And radiation signatures resembling the birth of galaxies. And then they clashed. The first strike was silent but absolute. Galactus unleashed a wave of energy equal to a dying star, vaporizing everything within thousands of kilometers. The Emperor absorbed it, deflecting it into the warp where it detonated like a psychic nova. The counterattack came not through matter, but through thought. The Emperor's will struck Galactus's mind directly. For the first time in eons, the Devourer staggered. He saw visions, not of defiance, but of humanity. He saw a child born under a dying sun. He saw a mother praying over a battlefield. He saw a soldier dying for strangers he would never meet. And through all of it, he saw a single truth, life's refusal to surrender. For a fleeting instant, Galactus hesitated, but the surfer, hovering nearby, sensed the danger. My lord, he warned, do not falter. Compassion will weaken you. Remember your nature. Galactus's eyes flared once more. You are right. I am necessity. He reached out, grasping the Emperor's light in his palm. The force of it crushed mountains and silenced oceans. The Emperor resisted, his golden aura burning brighter, but even his strength began to falter. For every fragment of warp energy he wielded, Galactus answered with the energy of galaxies. The ground beneath the Imperial Palace split apart. Billions died without knowing why. The sky became white fire. The throne itself began to melt. But the Emperor was not finished. Through the pain, he reached out across the galaxy, to every human mind still alive. His voice echoed in dreams, in memories, in dying breaths. Children of terror, lend me your will. It was not faith he demanded, but belief. And they gave it. From the lowest worker on a hive world to the last guardsman on a burning battlefield, humanity's collective consciousness rose like a tide. Each thought, each memory, became part of a greater psychic surge. The Emperor's form blazed higher until his light rivaled that of Galactus himself. The surfer shielded his eyes. What is this? Galactus turned, realizing too late that what he had dismissed as weakness was power, born of connection, not consumption. He draws strength from others, the Devourer murmured. A network of minds, a collective will. This is new, the Emperor's voice cut through the roar. You consume creation. I become it. Then came the second clash. The energy wave that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It tore the warp apart completely, fusing it with real space in a cataclysmic convergence. Demons screamed and vanished. Stars exploded. Time fractured. Every being, mortal or immortal, felt it. The collision of two cosmic absolutes. On Mars, the Mechanicus watched their instruments overload, their machine spirits weeping in digital agony. On the Blackstone fortress drifting near Cadia's ruins, fragments of chaos and technology fused, creating new hybrid entities. Even the Necron's dolmen gates flickered, as if reality itself no longer knew which layer it belonged to. And at the heart of it all, terror burned with twin lights, gold and violet, life and entropy locked in eternal struggle. Neither side yielded, neither could, because what was being decided was not victory, but definition. What kind of universe this would be? One built on will, or one defined by hunger? As the cosmos convulsed, a new force began to awaken, not from the warp, not from the stars, but from between them, where the rules of both broke down. Something that even Galactus had not anticipated, something born of their collision. A third consciousness, growing, observing, choosing. And it would decide which god remained when the light faded. The Silver Surfer's voice carried through the Imperium like an echo from beyond creation. He spoke not in words, but in thought and memory, allowing the Emperor and his psychic court to see what he had seen. The death of a universe. The final collapse of all matter and time. A single man, Garland of Tar, standing upon the edge of eternity as the last atoms of reality folded in upon themselves. When that universe died, Galan did not. The cosmic forces that destroyed all else transformed him, infused him with the raw essence of creation and annihilation. From that death was born Galactus, the devourer of worlds. He was not evil nor righteous. He was necessity given flesh, a balance to life itself. Without him, the universe would drown in unchecked growth. With him, it could survive its own excess. As the images faded, silence filled the golden chamber. The Emperor's psychic presence pulsed like a star behind the veil of reality. When he finally spoke, the surfer felt the words as light searing through his mind. "He is a relic of another cycle," the Emperor said, "a being outside the laws of this cosmos. His hunger is not choice. It is the law that birthed him." And yet, the voice grew softer, tinged with calculation. "Even laws may be rewritten." The surfer raised his head. "I have served him for eons," he said. "I have seen him show mercy only once, and it was not mercy. It was exhaustion. Your galaxy burns brighter than most. He was drawn to it long before you were born. You cannot fight him." "Everything can be fought," the Emperor replied, "even inevitability." For the first time, the surfer sensed defiance that was not arrogance. The Emperor was no mortal king, no god of deceit. He was will incarnate, and in that will, the surfer recognized something Galactus had never possessed: purpose. Within hours, the Emperor's orders spread across the Imperium. The Mechanicus were to redirect every fragment of Blackstone, every shard of the Cadian pylons, every relic capable of manipulating the warp. The goal, to construct a psychic array large enough to bend reality itself, a barrier not of matter, but of thought. It became known as the Astral Aegis. Meanwhile, the Eldari, guided by Farseer Lirathan, reached out through fragile alliances. They knew the Imperium's madness, but they also knew that if Galactus reached the webway, their craft worlds would be next. The Necrons, too, began to move, not to aid, but to preserve. Zarek activated forgotten defense moons from the War in Heaven, their surfaces covered in void-piercing weaponry designed to wound even Cetan. The galaxy, fractured for 10,000 years, found itself bound by one truth: survival. And yet, even unity was not enough. Galactus crossed the galactic rim, his vastness blotting out suns as he passed. His presence shattered the psychic balance of the warp. The Chaos Gods screamed, not in rage but in panic, as their domains began to collapse under his cosmic gravity. Slaanesha's palace crumbled. Tzeentch's realm twisted into nonsense. Khorne's brass citadel burned white-hot as its rivers of blood vaporized into nothingness. From the ruins of his garden, Nurgle whispered to his children, feed him the rot of stars. Perhaps he will choke on decay." But even decay could not touch Galactus. His arrival above Holy Terra was not heralded by trumpets or thunder. The sky simply darkened. Orbital defenses fired relentlessly, unleashing plasma barrages and macro-cannon shells large enough to level continents. The void shields around his armor rippled faintly. He extended his hand, and the entire orbital defense network dissolved into dust. On the throne world below, billions dropped to their knees in horror. Churches melted in molten faith as the sun itself dimmed behind his silhouette. Then came the voice, neither sound nor thought, but the resonance of existence itself. "I have come to feed." The Emperor's psychic flame blazed to life, filling the Immaterium with light. Every astropath across the Imperium fell to the ground, blood streaming from their eyes as his voice echoed through the warp. "You will not feed here." And for the first time in the galaxy's history, two cosmic beings, the Emperor of mankind and the Devourer of worlds, faced one another as equals. Galactus regarded the throne below, his expression unreadable. "You burn brightly," he said, "too brightly. Your species clings to pain and worships decay. Your existence is a distortion that stains the fabric of reality. I bring balance." The Emperor's aura flared, burning with the agony of 1,000 sacrificed psykers. "You speak of balance while devouring life without remorse. You are not balance, You are famine. Famine sustains creation, Galactus replied. Without death, there is no renewal. You rule an empire that worships stagnation. I am the end that ensures your meaning. The emperor rose from his throne, bound by golden chains of faith and machinery. Then let meaning be rewritten. The astral aegis activated. From every world across the Imperium, billions of minds focused their prayer, their fear, their devotion. The warp rippled, twisting into a lattice of psychic energy that enveloped Terra like a cocoon of burning light. Galactus paused. For the first time, his form flickered. The barrier did not repel him physically. It rejected his concept. The collective will of humanity, billions of souls unified in terror and faith, created a metaphysical contradiction to his hunger. For a moment, he was denied. But Galactus was not a god to be worshipped away. He adapted. He reached into the fabric of the warp and began to consume it. Reality screamed. The astral aegis faltered. Psychers exploded by the thousands, their minds burning like candles in a hurricane. The Emperor staggered. The Silver Surfer watched in horror as Galactus reached not for worlds, but for souls. He was devouring the psychic essence of mankind itself. And then, amidst the chaos, the Surfer acted. He flew upward, a streak of silver against the dark. He struck Galactus's armor with the power cosmic, not to harm, but to divert. For a heartbeat, Galactus's attention shifted. And in that heartbeat, the Surfer shouted through the void, "Stop! This world is not yours to end. You have devoured countless galaxies, but this one still fights for life. There is balance here. War, order, madness, hope. Do you not see? This universe feeds you. If you consume it all, you end the cycle that sustains you." Galactus hesitated. His eyes burned with starlight. "You speak rebellion, Herald." "I speak truth," the Surfer said. "If you end this galaxy, there will be no more life left to sustain you. You will become what you once feared, alone, drifting in the dark." The silence that followed stretched for eternity. Even the warp seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Galactus withdrew his hand. His form began to fade, folding into the cosmic horizon. "Then this galaxy shall persist, for now. But know this, Emperor, your light too must one day feed the dark." The Emperor said nothing. His psychic flame dimmed, and the Astronomicon flickered weakly once more. The Surfer watched as Galactus vanished into the void beyond the stars. Humanity had survived, but the cost had been incalculable. And yet in that fragile silence, something new had been born. An understanding that even gods could be reasoned with. Far across the galaxy, the Necrons sealed their tombs once more. The Eldari whispered prayers to long-dead deities. The Chaos gods rebuilt their realms, shaken and diminished. And on Terra, the Emperor returned to his eternal throne, silent but awake, his mind turning toward what must come next. Because he now knew the truth. The universe itself was dying, one hunger at a time. And Galactus was only the beginning. The stars had grown quieter. Weeks after Galactus vanished beyond the galactic rim, the night sky above Terra still shimmered faintly with the residue of his passing. A cosmic scar left on the veil between realities. Across the Imperium, billions of voices whispered prayers of gratitude, awe, and fear. For most, the horror was already fading into myth. Another impossible war survived through faith and blood. But in the halls of the Imperial Palace, and in the hidden strongholds of the galaxy's oldest beings, none mistook this for victory. It was merely a reprieve. On Terra, the Emperor's presence dimmed once more to its usual brilliance, sustaining the Astronomicon, holding together the psychic lifeline of humanity. Yet within the golden sarcophagus of the Golden Throne, his mind was elsewhere. He had seen something he could not unsee. Through the Silver Surfer's memories, he had glimpsed the greater multiverse, universes beyond counting, each born, destroyed, and reborn in endless succession. He had realized the awful truth, that his empire, his galaxy, and even the warp itself were nothing but one brief moment in an infinite cycle of consumption and rebirth. And if Galactus had come once, he could come again. The Silver Surfer remained on Terra for a time, a guest and a prisoner both. The Emperor's agents, the Custodes, and the Inquisition watched him with silent dread, knowing that this being had served the destroyer of worlds. Yet the Surfer walked among them without malice. He watched humanity's pain, its contradictions, its astonishing resilience. "You suffer yourselves," he said quietly to a custodian one night as the two looked out over the sprawl of Hive Terror. "You build a god out of agony, and yet you endure." "No wonder," Galactus paused. "Faith," the custodian answered, his golden armor reflecting the pale stars. "It is our greatest weapon, and our greatest curse." The Surfer nodded. He had seen galaxies burn for less. Meanwhile, far from Terra, ripples of the event spread outward. The Eldari Farseers recorded what had happened as the passing of the infinite hunger. Their prophecies became more fragmented than ever. Time itself seemed uncertain, as though the galaxy's fate had been briefly rewritten and then stitched back together. Among the craft worlds, new cults emerged, some worshipping Galactus as the final balance, others fearing his return as a second Rana Dandra, the ultimate end of all things. The Necrons, ever pragmatic, gathered in silent congress. Jarek, the Silent King, considered what he had witnessed. "We sought to escape death," he mused to his court of cryptex, "and instead found the embodiment of it. Even the machine cannot outlast hunger." His decree was swift. The Necron dynasties would turn inward, to prepare, not for war, but for extinction. If the cycle would one day repeat, they would face it on their own terms. In the eye of terror, the Chaos Gods recovered slowly, weakened and wary. Khorne's rage had lost some of its fire. Slanesh's song was softer now, touched by unease. Tzeentch, ever restless, pondered the event with something close to humility. For the first time in eternity, they had faced something utterly beyond manipulation, a force without desire, ideology, or deceit. Only necessity. "Perhaps," Tzeentch whispered to himself, "there are rules even I cannot rewrite." Only Nurgle laughed, softly and endlessly, as he tended to the remains of his withered garden. "Let the stars rot," he crooned. "Even the Great Eater cannot stop the bloom of decay. When he returns, I will be waiting." But deep down, even the Plague God knew the truth. Galactus had not merely consumed matter, he had consumed meaning. Where he had fed, the warp itself grew thin. And if he returned again, there might be nothing left for the Chaos Gods to infect. Across the void, the Mechanicus recorded the encounter as the omnivorous phenomenon. Entire orders were founded to study the energies left in Galactus's wake. Some claimed they could detect the mathematical residue of his hunger in the laws of gravity and light, a cosmic fingerprint proving that reality itself could be devoured. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, this was not heresy, but revelation. If the machine god exists, declared Archmagos Veritas, then Galactus is its predator. Even among mortals, the shadow of that thought lingered. Entire cults rose in secret corners of the Imperium, followers of the Star Eater, who saw Galactus not as an enemy, but as a herald of the Emperor's own evolution. They whispered that the Emperor had learned from him, had touched a fragment of his power through the astral aegis, and perhaps they were not entirely wrong. For on Terra, the Emperor began to change. Not physically. His ruined body remained bound to the Golden Throne. But psychically. His flame, once purely warp-born, now shimmered with a strange resonance. It was as though a fraction of Galactus's cosmic essence had brushed against his consciousness, merging faintly with it. He began to see not only the currents of the warp, but the underlying architecture of the universe, the invisible lattice that held matter and energy together. He perceived the mechanism of entropy, not as an end, but as a design. He began to understand Galactus, and understanding for the Emperor was the first step toward mastery. Decades passed. The galaxy healed in its brutal, imperfect way. New crusades began. Worlds were reclaimed, faith rekindled, heresies born and burned in equal measure. Humanity returned to its endless cycle of war. But on the hidden level of psychic reality, something had shifted. The Astronomican's light was different now, colder, sharper, touched with a mathematical precision never felt before. Few noticed, and those who did were silenced. On the far edge of the galaxy, the Silver Surfer prepared to leave. The Emperor's voice reached him one final time, silent but unignorable. "You showed me what lies beyond this universe. Tell your master this. Should he return, he will find not prey, but parity." The Surfer bowed his head. "Then perhaps one day you will not need thrones of gold to contain you." The light took him, and he was gone. 1,000 years later, in the deep dark between galaxies, Galactus stirred. He had fed upon a distant cluster of newborn suns, yet something gnawed at him. A faint resistance, like a universe beginning to push back. He turned his cosmic gaze toward the Milky Way once more and felt a presence there, vast and bright. It was not a god. It was not a mortal. It was something new. Across 10,000 light years, the Emperor's psychic flame flared briefly, like a star answering another's gaze. Two forces, once enemies, now locked in cosmic recognition. Predator and creator, destroyer and preserver. The universe, for now, continued to spin. But the balance had changed, for where once there was only hunger, now there was awareness. And awareness, in time, can become power. So the galaxy waited, its wars endless, its faith unbroken, its gods uncertain, under the silent watch of two beings on opposite ends of eternity. One who feeds, one who builds, and somewhere between them, the fragile miracle of life that refuses to die. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, there is not only war, there is hunger. And beyond even hunger, there is understanding.